Welcome to another live episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 366. I am your host, Michael. We're starting a little bit earlier this week because of my work schedule. I had to start a day earlier from the usual Tuesday format. Join me this week, Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing. What's going on, Jacob?
How's it going, sir?
Doing good. Hope to have Gail from nyfights.com and Communities Digital News, as well as Daniel from the Inscriber and for boxing news later on. I'm not going to be a lengthy show this evening because a lot of us fans, pundits, and whatnot will be up early in the morning. Tomorrow we're recording this on Monday, June the 6th. A lot of us will be up early, uh, uh, in the early morning hours of June the 7th to check out the rematch of Inoue and Donaire. We talked about it last week. We'll talk about it briefly again this evening. So again, this episode is not going to be that lengthy. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, blog, site discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out all information regarding the show, the site is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. If you want to email us, you can do so, p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. If on the site you can do navigating around, you can find where to find us all over the socials, the page on the channel, the YouTube, the link for the YouTube channel, excuse me, the link to where to find us on Facebook / Meta, Instagram, IG, Twitter, uh, Tumblr, where you can donate. Got Cash Me, PayPal donation links. Let donation be the best nation. It will really help the overall production behind the scenes. So shoot some coin if you have some spare change your way. Um, Also, links to the Beachbody on Demand. Excuse me. I am not a coach for Beachbody anymore, but I still strongly suggest you check out Beachbody on Demand. If you're looking to get your body right as we're inching closer to the summer, uh, Beachbody on Demand has a program for whatever suitable fitness goals / interests you may have in mind. If you're looking for a boxing specific base program, please check out Beach 10 Rounds on Beachbody on Demand. 10 Rounds is a 6-week program, 3 days a week of boxing based cardio, 2 days a week of resistance / weight training. Really excellent program. I've went through it a couple times. At the very least, take advantage of the free 14-day trial. And what comes with that is for 14 days, you have free access to any and all programs on Beachbody on demand, be it be it 10 rounds, be it 6 weeks of the work, be it 645, bar blend, pio, morning meltdown, um, the P90X series 1, 2, and 3, um, get up, um, any and all programs, 30-day breakaway, insanity, uh, Beachbody on demand. It basically has it all. So at the very least, take advantage of the free 14-day trial. Let's get things going this evening. Like I said earlier, hope to have Gail and Daniel on the show with us later on. But let's get down to breaking down these fights. Let's begin, Jacob, with the big fight of the weekend that took place late Saturday evening over in Melbourne, Australia. Undisputed belts on the line at 135 pounds. Unified champion George Kambosos fighting WBC champion Devin Haney. And the crowd was pretty raucous, Jacob, in the moments before the bell rang. But by midway, I would say the crowd was pretty much crickets. And that is because Haney, that jab, he got that stick working early and often, and he controlled and neutralized anything that Kambosos thought that he could do. Um, Put on boxing display, uh, tamed the fiery Kambosos on the way to a unanimous decision win. The scorecards were 16-12 on 2 of the scorecards, 18-10 on the third. I personally, Jacob, didn't have Kambosos winning more than 2 rounds. Uh, was it the most exciting performance of Haney's? Was it the most exciting fight? No. But that doesn't mean that Haney didn't dominate, and he did, in my opinion. Uh, had it his way throughout, and I see Gail has joined us. I hope to have Daniel on with us as well. I'll start with you, Jacob, and then I go back to Gail. Yeah, Haney, he did. He said he was going to. He said his mission was to go down to Australia against all odds and beat Kambosos and become undisputed lightweight champion of the world, and he did just that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect this to be a very exciting fight. We kind of knew what Haney was going to do. You know, establish his jab, use his feet, and you know, just look for his opportunities and just pile up the points and win rounds. Now with Kambosos, I was actually really surprised that for a guy that came in with a game plan against Teofimo Lopez and executed it pretty well and was able to come out with that big win. It seemed like he was lost in this fight, and I didn't understand why he didn't try something different or try to put in a second gear. He seemed to kind of get desperate at times and was like winging his punches and missing badly. He was letting the Haney's jab basically. Haney dictated the pace with his jab and the distance, and he looked lost out there. It was I agree with you. It was a pretty landslide victory, in my opinion. Although two of the judges, I believe, had it 116, 112, which is to me it was crazy that they had it that close. But that was kind of one of the things that I predicted was that I actually thought Haney would win the fight, but I thought maybe if it was close enough that Kambosos being in his home turf would get the nod. So kind of like a contentious split decision. But I'm glad the right person won in the end. And the thing that I still haven't figured out, because I know that in signing this fight, it was like an automatic rematch clause that's going to be held in Australia if Kambosos lost. But then when they were asking Haney at the end, he was like, "Oh well, if it makes sense and blah blah blah." But I was like, "Well, isn't that part of the clause? Like, that's part of the agreement. So it doesn't really matter whether you want it or not. It's whether Kambosos exercises that part of the clause." So it looks like they're, in my opinion, if it's in the contract, they're probably going to run it back, and it probably be the same result. I don't really see where. Kambosos is kind of an overachiever to me. I don't see that he's going to be able to do anything that much different to win this fight. So, it is what it is. But now we have at least some clarity in the division.
Clarity indeed. And I go to you, Gail. Jacob was mentioning his last bit of his breakdown was the rematch clause. And that was a point of discussion for pundits and fans throughout. Was that rematch clause, which stated if Haney were to win, they would run it back in Australia. But as you and I know, that this is boxing, nothing is set in stone, nothing is ironclad, including contracts. Um, just because there is a contract in place, uh, anything can be worked out, anything can be wiggled around, especially given the aftermath of this fight. Because because yeah, they're supposed to fight again, but given how dominant Haney was, does anybody really want to see it? And if Haney, he has the cards now, right? Heading in, he took less money. Well, let me go back. He agreed to go to Australia to make this fight happen. In order for this fight to happen, he agreed to leave the business deal that he has with the Zone and sign a co promotional pact with Top Rank and DeBella Entertainment. He was the one who agreed to take, a significant pay cut doing all of that to make this fight happen. He has the cards now, and when he says that, yeah, he wants to do it if it's right, okay, that means that one, if he agrees to it, those on he has to make more money and significantly more money And even then, and if he doesn't get the money that he wants and all the other conditions, yeah, he could move on. What say you?
Well, he could, and let's face it, money always talks. So if somebody really, really doesn't want this fight, the little money changes hands and things change. Certainly in the ring, Haney has the upper hand. But it's the Kambosos team who has the contract and the legally binding document. So they're all going to have to sit down. But as we know, anything can be negotiated. The sides are going to have to decide, yeah, what's the upside from the athletic perspective? What's the upside from the economic perspective? The only place that fight's going to make money again, big money, is back in Australia. Then my understanding is that's part of the rematch clause, because you're right. There aren't a lot of American fans in particular who are going to want to see that again. And as impressive as Haney was and as skilled, my God, there was not one wasted movement by Haney in that fight. But as good as the performance was, I would never call it boring. But you're watching the fight, you're checking your phone, and you're what's the dog doing over there? It wasn't riveting, right? The fight isn't going to be remembered visually in your head much beyond a couple of weeks. Whereas anyone who saw the Joel Cordina knockout, oh, you're going to remember that. So you can't do it here. That's the problem. If Haney gets a good enough offer and one of the other gentlemen that is a contender around his weight class mans up and says, let's fight, talking to you, Tank Davis, um, then there's enough upside of the money for them to say, listen, let's just buy this out and move on. And that might be what happens. It's going to be an interesting couple of months. Both guys are going to want to take a little bit of a break, rightfully so, and let their negotiating teams start some polite conversations. I think because of the folks involved, they'll work it out, and what the outcome is may or may not involve a rematch at all. We'll see. I just don't see, frankly, any upside other than a paycheck for Kambosos Jr., because despite what he said in the ring after the fight about he'll make the adjustments and he'll come back, there is nothing he could do to beat Haney, in my opinion. And now that Haney's got a taste of him and taken a couple of shots from him, I don't think he feels like he's got anything to fear. I think it might even be a worse beatdown in the rematch. So if I'm George Kambosos Jr. and Lou DiBella and his team, I think long and hard about drawing out the negotiations for a little nice payoff, and he moves on.
I mean, in a rematch is unless um Cambosis can find a way to hit and to land and hurt Haney. I agree with you. He has no shot because he can't outbox him. That was proven clear on Saturday. It doesn't matter what he can do. He's talking about making changes. Houseway, I just don't see it at this point. And the reason I keep leaving a small window open, we talked about Tank Davis last week, and yeah, animosity between promoters goes out the window when there's a lot of money that can be made for a fight, and Haney giving off of this high profile win, despite people will say it was not the most exciting thing. He is undisputed champ. He does have a social media following. He makes good money generally, and we all know that the cash cow Javante Davis is, and so yeah. If Floyd, this is we talked about last week. What's in the aftermath of Tank's win over Rolly, it's time for him to step up and fight someone significant. Floyd, you should be looking. You should be checking the books, checking going with your legal team, and seeing if there's a way that you can finagle your fighter's way into a possible fight with Haney this fall. It'd be the perfect time to do it. Let's see if he does. Let's see if he does. Or we will see that rematch again I think we all are agreement here that uh, despite the changes that Kambosos claims that he needs to make, there's little to nothing that he could do in a possible rematch with Devin Haney. Let's move on and talk about some more fights. Let's move on from Australia to Minnesota. I'll start with you on this one, Gail. The main event of this one was Showtime card with Stephen Fulton facing former unified champion Danny Roman, excuse me. Fulton defended his BCBO titles at 122 pounds, and I'm not surprised that Fulton won, Gail. I am surprised that he won by such a clear cut margin. Uh, just too much movement, too much versatility, too much defense from uh, Fulton. The same way that the same way that Haney dominated against um, Kambosos, I would argue Fulton in many aspects was just as dominant in this win of Roman. Very impressive performance, in my opinion.
It really was impressive. Let's think back to Danny Roman's performance against MJ Akhmadaliev. He lost by a razor thin margin. There were a lot of people that thought Roman won that fight with Akhmadaliev, who's gone on to even better performances, who's acknowledged as the man at the top of the division. And yet Fulton completely disarmed him, completely. So, boy, comparing, triangulating those two fights, against that potential unification fight with Akhmadaliev, boy, did Fulton look impressive. I really thought it would be a far tougher fight. He was on cruise control after the middle rounds. There was not anything he could do, Roman, to crack Fulton. He's just too smart in the ring, too skilled. He does exactly what he needs to do. And his versatility is really amazing because, he's been known as a tactical fighter. And then he had a couple of just sheer bangers. And then he has this fight against somebody who can bang and thought, nope, not playing your game, mister. And any fighter who can impose his version of the game plan on his opponent is already a few rounds ahead on the scorecard and a few steps ahead in the ring. Absolutely, almost a star-making performance for Fulton. Unfortunately, although like Haney, so tactically brilliant, so smooth, so slick, not the most thrilling fight for the average fan. But we know Fulton is capable of winding it up. So there's a little bit of difference there. He can pull off that sort of performance when he needs to. But this weekend, he didn't need to.
Is it time that folks behind the scenes begin the process of making Fulton Akhmadaliev for all the belts in 122, Gail?
I'm sorry, was that asked to me? Ask me that again.
Yeah. Is it time for folks behind the scenes to start working on something in terms of making Fulton Akhmadaliev for all the belts at 122?
I don't love the let's wait, let's build the fight, let's marinate, all that stuff. But I do think Fulton needs just one or two more fights. And honestly, Akhmadaliev needs a couple more, not to prepare, but to broaden their fan base, to broaden the average fan's knowledge of who they both are. They both need to be visible this year. And then, yeah, I think they're both heading for each other. We know that. Now, Fulton has made some noise about, well, don't know how long I'm going to stay in this division kind of comments. He seemed to make weight just fine. He worked with a nutritionist for the first time, and he said it made absolutely all the difference. So because of the outcome this weekend and that not being a factor in a negative sense, in other words, it was a factor that it worked great for him, maybe the discussion about I'm not sure I'm going to stick around in the division can be tabled for a little bit, since that approach worked really well for him, because he would have to stick around to face Akhmadaliev. If not, he's got a whole new lineup if he goes up. So either way, we're going to get some great fights out of Fulton. He he is hovering under the top 10 of the pound for pound list for sure.
It would behoove Schoolboy Fulton to stay at 122 for at least the next year. You got Akhmadaliev out there. There's potential of one highly prominent bantamweight of moving up to 122 pounds in the next 6 months to a year. And we're talking about Inoue, who's going to fight Donaire actually tomorrow morning, our time, as of this recording. And so, no. Uh, the opportunity, I will argue the bigger fights are at 122 right now as opposed to 126 pounds. To your point, Gail, he seemed to make the weight comfortably heading into this fight. This is where he should stay for the foreseeable future. I'll go to you, Daniel, since Daniel is hopped on with us. And one also in the chat, Olaf says, "What up?" Um, on the undercard of Fulton Roman, we talked about David Morrell, who has what the WBA regular belt at 168 pounds, and I personally talked about how unsure I am of him. I just can't get a read of him. Fought a guy by the name of Kalvin Henderson, Daniel, and for me personally, I didn't see the fight in full live because I was at work, but I saw highlights when I got home and read fight reports and was checking out boxing Twitter live as it happened. And yeah, when this will help me get some clarity above him because he took it to Henderson, was in his face, was in his chest, pressured him throughout, overwhelmed him to the point that he just had Henderson was just basically, I don't want no more. Um, at the time it was stopped. If you saw the fight, Daniel, what did you get out of Morrell? And afterward, he was calling out the big names. He mentioned Benavidez. I think he mentioned some other guys at 168 pounds. Is he ready for that? Uh, Based on what I've read and based on the highlights I saw, if he wants to fight Benavidez and Benavidez wants to fight him, it seems like a logical matchup.
It does. And this fight actually did a little bit more when it came to Morrell. It did show that if he needs to really, really make it rough or really, really try to get an inside fight, not to make it technical, he's able to do that. And when calling out Benavides, it is a smart move because if you beat Benavides and if you're still holding that WBA belt, then we have a situation where now you have two chances to challenge one Canelo Alvarez as far as mandatories are concerned. Does Benavides obviously is probably the highest profile guy you can get at 168 pounds in the PDC side of things, unless you can get Cato Plant, which would be a good rehab fight for both. It would be a good step up fight for Morrell, and it would be a decent rehab fight for Plant after losing to Canelo the way he did. Like he showed that he can get inside. He showed that he needs to get that style in because with Benavides, you need to get inside because he will keep you away with the jab and he will keep you away with activity. So it's a smart move. I like the fight. And hopefully, like I said, we'll get one of those fights in the future. But normally, on this division, everybody's looking to wait and see right now for Canelo, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I was impressed from what I've seen of it and from what I read about it. I was impressed. As I'm like after and hearing hearing about the result. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. You were in there against an inferior guy on paper. You didn't just win, but you just dominated and you shut him out. And like I said, you kind of made him quit at the end. So again, Benavidez, that's the obvious choice. Caleb Plant, throw him in there as well. I know he's had under 10 fights, but if he wants the big names, doggone it, put him in there in the ring with him. I'm going back to you, Gail, for this final fight. You mentioned him briefly in passing in terms of the discussion about Haney, right? And that is Joe Cordina as he challenged Kenichi Ogawa in his hometown of Cardiff, Wales. Ogawa traveling to Japan to make the first defense of the IBF belt at 130 pounds. And I'm gonna ask a similar question here. What were you more surprised at, the fact that Cordina won, or the way he won? Because he just didn't win. He won in explosive, sensational fashion. Uh, One hitter quitter style, single right hand, right on the button, put Agawa down. Clearly hurt. Referee wisely stepped in and stopped it. You want to talk about impressive? You want to talk about making a splash on the international scene? Joe Cordino certainly did that this past weekend.
Boy, it was a good weekend in sports for Wales. Their national soccer team gets themselves into the World Cup, and Joe Cordina lights it up in front of the hometown fans. He wins the IBF super featherweight title. Um, Ogawa really, even though he was not the hometown fighter, he's the champion. He's the favorite. Cordina, while he's undefeated, had just not shown anything like this. I think his prior record was 14-0 with 8 knockouts. So 14-0, 8 knockouts. Okay, for somewhat of a beginner, right? Not bad. But holy cow, um, you know, Ogawa just let himself get caught, and Cordina put the right punch down the pipeline, straight right hand off a little bit of a feint. And that feint caused Ogawa to drop his left hand after he fired a few jabs off. And man, what a massive mistake. He put his face right in front of Cordina's fist. Boom, fired. And Cordina said he and his team had watched video of Ogawa, had practiced that punch, said he knew he needed to keep stepping to the right, and trying to get him to drop his hand, and bang, that he could make him do it, and he'd land that punch. And by God, he did. Good for him. If that's truly how it happened, it wasn't just in retrospect. It couldn't have been better planned out, better delivered. And it was one of those shots where it was perfectly placed. That was the other thing. Ogawa was coming in a little. It wasn't kind of a classic counter punch, Pacquiao Marquez style punch, but damn, it dropped him just about as hard. And you saw Ogawa's head just whip around, and it wasn't because he was taking, turning away from the punch. That was due to Cordina's fist whipping his head around. Yeah, and he was done. He did get to his feet, but not very well. I'm actually surprised he got to his feet at all. It was that good a punch. So Cordina now becomes, pretty serious player at super featherweight. Of course, he's talking about that he wants Shakur Stevenson. I say, well, okay, Joe, you know what?
Not yet, young man.
Little bit, you're not going to trick Shakur Stevenson into laying himself open like Ogawa did. Not a chance. I would like to see him, though, take on, some of the other sort of secondary players in that division, even, if they're maybe past their prime. As long as he gets in front of some guys with good experience, can he repeat that performance or even come close with a dominant performance? For a few more fights, great. Then you could start calling out the other title holders. On the basis of one well-placed punch, I say, well, be careful what you wish for there, man. But I bet he'll never have to buy a drink in Cardiff again in his life. And I cannot imagine there was a drop of beer or alcohol, for that matter, left in Wales after last night.
Absolutely, absolutely. He has a mandatory Cordina coming up against. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but just trust me on this one. He has a mandatory Cordina coming up on docket. He's going to have to go through that probably in his next bout. And I hope you heard me when he mentioned what how that Eddie Hearn was talking Shakur in the post fight. No, as impressive as Cordina was in this candidate for KO of the year against Ogawa. Look, Shakur is another. He's a whole different level, right? Whole different level boxer who is just scratching the surface on how good he can be. He's not going to be there to be hit like that. Uh, but I got to give Cordina credit. The irony is, folks, is that his career has been plagued by injuries to his right hand, and yet it was that right hand punch that put Ogawa down and finished him off, right? And he's a world champion now. I think he's a guy of substance. Um, Again, but a lot of it depends on his. Uh, I'm prognosticating here a fight against a mandatory contender who's no slouch, who he has to deal with later on this year. I'll go back to comment from Olaf. Shout out to Olaf who's joined us. If you are watching this live or even later on YouTube, please make sure to hit that like button. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. Really helps out in terms of the algorithm and get us closer to pound for pound box report being monetized. So do us a solid in that regard. He says that how about Brown blasting out Junior Fa in one round? What he's referring to as Marcus Brown, um, who who, as I'll just quote here what Olaf said, blasting out Junior Fa in one round on the undercard of and Kambosos Haney. Anyone wants to tackle that right quick before we move on to previews? Because we're doing the show so early in the week, not much news on the. Well, it is one bit of news on the docket, but yeah. Anybody want to respond to Olaf's comment/question?
It was a mighty blast from the 43-year-old Brown. I mean, good for him. He did not waste any time getting down to business. And, you watch a knockout like that and you really, really understand the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Because damn, Fall took a fall. And talk about doing the stanky leg. He also, I didn't think was going to get up, and he did. And it was a really bad idea. Unfortunately, if you watch the replays of both punches, they were both behind the head. Now, it wasn't Brown's fault. It was the way Fa turned away from him. The first one was really above the ear. It was really a blistering shot in just the wrong place for your brain. Boy, that's a bad punch. It scrambles you. The second one was completely behind the head. And the truth is, it was really unnecessary. Fa should have stayed down on the canvas. And I'm less troubled by it being so blatantly a behind the head punch as the fact that Fa was done. I mean, it was a matter of seconds, and there were still almost 2 minutes in the round. So yeah, it was fun to watch. And then we were treated to more than an hour and a half of blathering, replayed feature stories, delay, perhaps the worst ESPN broadcast I can recall ever.
Yeah, and not much you can say about that. They were both rabbit punches, and in all honesty, this effectively ends any real chance, unless some serious rehab happens of Junior Fa even being considered somewhat of a contender now at heavyweight. Lucas Brown, he said he has like a few fights left in him. Like he'll stay just for like a special attraction in Australia. Like he's not gonna challenge for a world title. You're not gonna see him in front of Usyk anytime soon. So it is what it was. I do feel bad for Junior Fa. He did have a pretty good upside, but ever since that snooze fest he put up against Joseph Parker, and then this, yeah, like his days at the top level are pretty much done. He probably will slowly be put into like a gatekeeper status.
He got the win. Okay, slow clap. Does it take him anywhere significant? No, it just doesn't. I mean, I mean, I don't mean to besmirch him or anything like that, but it is what it is. He's not going to get a big bump from this win over Junior Five, who's coming off of a loss to Joseph Parker in a bout that Daniel was watching, and he probably had to take no dose to stay up while watching it. He was mad watching. Daniel was on here on the show recapping it, and he was mad that he had to recap it because the fight was so.
Yeah,
So again, congrats on the win, but where he goes from here, not much anywhere, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, wait
Um,
a minute. There's bare knuckle. There's WWE. Yeah, put that man in front of Alan the Savage Babbage and let him have at him. I mean, he'll get some more paychecks. You know he will.
yeah, I mean, yeah. It's about as far as it'll go. Shout out to Abraham Gonzalez for checking us out, listening to us live again. If you checking us out live or you're watching us at a later date on YouTube, here on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button and please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Again, it'll help the overall algorithm. It'll get us closer and closer to being monetized. And if you're checking out the podcast on Twitter, a podcast on other podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere and everywhere else in between. Make sure to follow us there as well. I didn't have a news segment on the show this week, but there is some breaking news regarding one. Jamel Charlo, WBC middleweight champion, um, Daniel, and looks like his upcoming fight, supposed upcoming fight against Selecki is suddenly off now. I wasn't able to check the details. Do you have any information in terms of why the fight is now postponed?
Yeah, there was a very, very brief statement from Charlo's promoter at camp saying that he had suffered a back injury in training. He needs recovery time. Fight will be rescheduled. And it was a paragraph of news at best. That was it. I'm sure it's a legit issue because Charlo and Selecki had a news conference with the media online last week. They both looked ready to go. Both seem pretty respectful of each other, pretty good natured about it, especially for Charlo. um, so I'm sure it's sincerely, occurred back injury. And man, anybody who's ever had a sore back, a bad back, injured their back, strained it deadlifting, back injuries can be serious. So they're right to take it seriously and postpone the fight. It's not as if it was a barn burner anyway.
yeah, it's pretty
Well,
much they're pretty much playing it safe. It's something that they have to take care of. The only thing, hopefully, is Maul's already been teetering between 160 and 168. And like I say, he has the belt at 160. I don't think he wants to get this will be the catalyst to push him to 168 because yeah, he did look lively. He didn't look like he was stressing during the presser, and like I said, best speed of recovery.
yeah, pretty much that's all. And yeah, he's not going to fight. Fights postponed, back injury. So I hope he gets better, and I hope we see that fight soon. Get that out the way because let's face it, get this fight out the way, and hope for bigger and better fights for Jamal Charlo, who needs a significant fight at this point. A fight against a significant, big time opponent at this point in his career. Um, Read some comments here from. I'll read this as we going along, but um,
The best part of the news conference, by the way, is that translating for Sulecki was Andres Fonfara, one of my favorite fighters and certainly my favorite Polish fighter of all time after he wasted Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.
oh, that happened.
A fight that Jacob and I were both present for, as a matter of fact. Fonfara was being his translator, and I think has been working in his training camp, which was kind of a kick.
Interesting. Let's move on to give a quick second here. Give a quick opportunity if anybody who has some news that they want to, some tea that they want to spill right quick before we go to preview some fights here. The floor is yours.
The only thing I have is that I heard, and I'm sure everybody knows about this already, is that word around the campfire is that the Spence Crawford fight is close to being closed, and I think they're just waiting for maybe a few other things. But they thought that maybe they were going to announce it during the Davis fight, but I don't know. That's what I'm seeing is that it's pretty close to being done. So hopefully that's true, and hopefully I think they said Vegas possibly. So I don't know. That's the only news that I heard that was big.
I got some info on that. I'm not at liberty to discuss it here. I'll tell you. I'll give you that. I'll give you the update on that um, after the show once the cameras are off and once I hit that in broadcast button. But yeah, I have a bit of an update on that on some information that I got coming my way in terms of the latest developments on that fight, Jacob. Let's move on to um, get to some previews here, and going to start a little bit backwards here. Uh, we're going to end. We talked about in the last fight. We're going to talk about. We discussed it last week. We're going to touch on it again as we end the show. But let's start. Intriguing fight, Daniel, that's taking place in Mexico on the zone card on this coming Friday. Um, Kind of a unification, if you will, of the WBA junior flyweight situation, where you have the 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 super champ Kyoguchi fighting the regular champ Bermudez. Kyoguchi going to Mexico to fight Bermudez. The interesting thing is that that fight is actually happening in Mexico. I think it's part and parcel of the fact that Kyoguchi is signed with the zone, but the fight itself, I think, is low key very, very interesting. Um, Kyoguchi is a pressure fighter, two division champion, but he hasn't looked that great in his last couple of outings. He's fighting a Bermudez who looked outstanding in a stoppage win over the previously highly regarded Carlos Canizales. Stopped him in five. I can't remember what round, but he stopped him. I didn't see that development happening. Uh, Showed all kinds of speed and power. And if folks are thinking that Kyoguchi is just going to go in there and have his way with Bermudez, they are sadly mistaken, particularly the Bermudez that I personally saw against Canizales. I think this is a 50-50, 60-40 fight. It can go either way. And I'm telling folks right here and right now, Kyoguchi may be the favorite on a lot of the bookies, but do not be surprised if Bermudez walks out the ring as full WBA junior flyweight champion. A breakdown of this fight for me, Daniel.
Yes, exactly. This is gonna be a very, very, very fun fight. And from what we see already last week when I mentioned with Cordina and Ogawa, surprises can happen very, very quickly. And this is a similar situation. Japanese fighter going into the home turf for the opponent, and it's two styles that are very complementary of each other. I have a feeling that this is gonna drag it out. I have a feeling Koguchi's gonna have a lot of success, but I'm like I said, I'm pulling for an upset again. I think Bermudez is gonna get the job done. He does have a bit of power, and he will probably be able to withstand Koguchi in the middle rounds, and that is gonna be very fun. But I do see Bermudez being the full WBA champion at the end of the day.
Let's move on and go from that card on the zone. Uh, to an ESPN card, and I'll go to you on this one, Jacob. Look, Edgar Berlanga in many ways is a bipolar figure. A lot of hype early on in his career on the ESPN, painting him as just the next great knockout king. But in his last few bouts, he's been made to struggle a bit. He's talked about himself as being the future, but um, I have questions in plenty of Berlanga. He's fighting an Alexis Angulo. Um, on paper, one of the tougher matchups of Berlanga's career. But if he's the fighter that he keeps telling folks that he is, he should win. The ultimate thing for me, Jacob, is that I want to see him uh, impressive from a skill standpoint. If he just goes in there and just happens to hit this guy, bang him upside the head, and take him out, that doesn't move the needle with me. I want to see overall development offensively and defensively. Until I see that, I still have plenty of questions about him. Your thoughts on Berlanga and this upcoming fight against Angulo?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there was all this hype behind Berlanga because he was knocking people out, and what do you have, like 16 fights in a row and knocking people out in the first round. But again, this is against so competition, if that, maybe even below that. So there's still a lot of in his last few fights. I noticed a lot of holes in his game, and even specifically his fight against Rolls. I think if Rolls had maybe pushed the fight a little bit more and not been so cautious, he might even won. He could have even maybe won that fight. Because Berlanga was terrible at cutting off the ring. He was just kind of looking for the knockout. He has a lot of bad habits and tendencies. So. And I think the fight before that, he got knocked down too. So I think he's susceptible to being a flash in the pan. I don't see the problem with having all these first round knockouts is that you don't get to see too much of the skills. To see if this fighter actually has boxing ability. How they are with. Adversity, how are their feet, how's their defense, how all these things, because it's over in less than 3 minutes. So I think now that we've been able to see him, basically was it 3 fights in a row, go to the unanimous decision, so 8 to 10 rounds. We're starting to see that this might not he might not have he might have some pop, but that's only going to carry you so far. You get against somebody that can counter you and use your aggressive style against you. You're probably going to be a stepping stone for a lot of people. So yeah, I'm interested to know whether his latest camp, if they've done any improvements to his last fight.
And the fight between Berlanga and Angulo is going to take place on the 11th in New York City, on ESPN and ESPN Plus. That same night, I'll go to you, Gail, in Anaheim. Jaime Munguia, highly ranked at 160 pounds, former 154-pound champion, fighting a guy by the name of, wait for it, Jim Kelly. I heard the name. I'm thinking, is he fighting the former Buffalo Bills quarterback or the martial arts star from Enter the Dragon? Jim Kelly? Who? Who? What? Golden Boy? Y'all couldn't do better than this? Jim Kelly, Gail. Jim Kelly.
Can you all hear us just face palming over this matchup? I mean, I will applaud Munguia and Golden Boy for at least keeping him busy. Okay, I'll give him that. That is the most complimentary thing I can find to say. I mean, for Pete's sake, he would have been better off in his career development if Golden Boy had scheduled a fight, another one in Tijuana or another Mexican venue near the border, cross-border town, and pulled up, any decently decent record, couple of losses, mystery Mexican opponent. Would have been far better than this. Would have been great for his fans in Mexico and wouldn't have, frankly, wasted our time. I just don't get this at all. There's no way to spin it. It's unfortunately going to get lost in, the aftermath of Inouye Donaire, even though it's 3 days later, 4 days later. Perhaps it will draw well in Southern California. There is a very loyal fan base. Munguia is very well liked, but Munguia and Golden Boy have got to step up. Look what's going on around you, everybody. You've got people like Devin Haney showing it not only should be done, it can be done. It must be done. If you really want to be one of those names people respect and talk about, that's what you've got to do. I don't know whether they're having trouble finding opponents. They aren't willing to pay the money it takes for someone to face Munguia. There's something going on there that they have got to fix. This will not do it. And despite it being a quick trip for me to go see it, I think I've got a puppy to train.
Don't lower yourself, Gail, by doing that.
You gotta get those snakes out of your backyard first.
Oh, that too. I feel like Samuel L. Jackson these days around my house.
I mean, they turned down a fight with Alan Kanluli for this.
Well,
they don't want that smoke, man.
Alan Kanluli is a bad man.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot for Munguia to bite off. But come on. I mean, it's not feast or famine. It's not Alan Kanluli and Kelly is your only two choices. Like I say, go match him up with somebody in Mexico, an all-action fight. Get him, a little more ring experience. Make the fans in Mexico happy. Make a few bucks. Would be far better than this. I mean, seriously, put him on Box Azteca Friday night if you have to.
Well, what's odd about this is that Munguia was. Sorry about that. Munguia was, once touted as a potential opponent for, Triple G. After he had that win against was it Ali, and then all of a sudden, he's like lost in this zone of fighting. His competition just hasn't been there. And this Kelly guy, I looking at his fights because I had never heard of him before. I thought Jim Kelly was going to throw footballs at Munguia's head and try to knock him out or something. But he fought Dennis Hogan, which was an opponent that I thought Munguia lost against, and he fought Liam Smith. Those are his 2 losses. Was against those 2 guys. So probably this guy's not going to do much. He doesn't have a bunch of KOs or anything. So this is really kind of a sad state of affairs for Golden Boy, who seems to be slowly crumbling. I mean, what do they have to really offer anymore? I mean, they lost Canelo. The Ortiz situation is still kind of up in the air. I think they announced his fight in Texas. He's going to fight, coming back. But, Ryan Garcia, we'll see what happens with him. But I don't know. Golden Boy seems to be going downhill.
They've got Garcia, and Zordo Ramirez is all of a sudden the big ticket man, but he's having trouble getting fights because of his promotional situation and where all the light heavyweight talent is. So, yeah, it's not looking good. They need to buy themselves some time to develop their younger prospects, and they do have some. But I'm very happy that they are doing the club series now out in Indio at Fantasy Springs. That's Golden Boy's bread and butter, really. And they need to lean in hard on that stuff.
Yeah. To me, honestly, this kind of does feel like a Xanfer type of decision. They have been known to be a little bit overprotective of their top guys. And they have to have a say when it comes to Munguia. Either, it doesn't really matter if it was Xanfer, if it was Golden Boy. It is a net negative for Munguia in this case. The only thing that you can do is probably try to see what you're going to position with as far as he's 10, like I say, he's still highly ranked in the WBO. He's still highly ranked in the WBC. The question is whether were you only seeing how good Maul was going to look against Lecky before making that move, or were you just going to stay away from WO picture altogether? Either way, like it's just bad. It's just bad all around. Yeah, Golden Boy is going to get dragged for this because they're the stateside person, but I have a feeling that Zanfer made the final call on this.
You got Sinicio Estrada, a spectacular fighter. You got her held up, right? Can't get a fight with her when she got opportunities at 105 and 108, but then you turn around, Golden Boy, and you give us this farcical matchup. I can't with y'all. I can't with y'all. I'm done. I'm done. Let's move on. Uh, yeah, let's move on because nah, I'm done. I can't. That make me want to cuss. One more fight before. Yeah, actually a couple more fights actually because we're gonna go back to and give a further in insight on on a match we talked about last week, and this play and this is fight is taking place I believe in Miami, a heavyweight fight between Trevor Bryan, I guess for the WBA regular title, heavyweight title. He's putting that belt on the line against Daniel Dubois. Whoever wants to take it by all means, but uh, nothing against Bryan, but Dubois should win this, and he should win this by knockout. If he doesn't, uh, coming off of the loss to Joe Joyce last year, you talk about a guy who deserves major side eye. It would be one Dubois. Nothing again, nothing against Bryan, but I just don't see him having any much of any chance here against the favorite Dubois.
First of all, what the hell has the city of Miami done to Don King to torture us? Like what did we do, Don? What did we do? Are you just still mad about LeBron leaving in 2010? Is that what that is? But the only major hope that you have in this situation is that you finally get rid of Trevor Bryan and by extension Don King out of this scenario. I don't know if they ever resolved the Fresa Kendo situation. I haven't looked into it but if they can at least get rid of that, if Dubois can at least do that, which he should, this should be a very, very easy fight for Daniel Dubois. It gets us rid of that because if it's anything different or by some machination of the Necronomicon, we see Trevor Bryan win, that just means we still have Don King to deal with. Jesus.
Y'all want to touch on this Daniel? I mean Gail and Jacob, or you just like, it's not even worth it.
Hey, this is a confidence builder fight for Dubois, and you've got promoters like Don King. They're willing to sell out their guys to let him take a battering. I mean, we would like to think that Don King can't live forever, but we don't know what kind of deal with the devil he's made. So we'll see.
I got a jerk.
He
I
doesn't
got a
have to
joke I
make a
really
deal with
want
the
to
devil.
insert
He
there,
is the
but
devil.
I don't. I got a joke that I really would like to insert there, but I'm gonna leave that alone because there could be a fans of a certain politician. No, no, no. Let me take that back later for it. You say whatever deal he's made, it's the same deal that Mitch McConnell has made. That creeping looking son of a gun. So two peas in the same pot, if you ask me, because both of them have got to go. Capital G, capital O. Anything, Jacob, or you just like, yeah, let's move on and talk in a way and don't air rematch.
No, the only thing I was gonna say was that Don King doesn't need to make a deal with the devil because he is the devil.
Ha! Dun-dun-dun. And that pretty much settles it and wraps that fight up. Let's move on. We like I said, we talked about this last week in depth. We're going to talk about it briefly right here again because a lot of us um, are going to be up early watching this rematch between Naoya Inoue, Nonito Donaire, unification bout at 118 pounds, BA, BC, um, IBF, old school, 3 belts are on the line, if you will. These, as most boxing fans would since know, or a modicum of knowledge knows, the two fought November 19th, the finals of the World Boxing Super Series tournament. Uh, Inoue won by unanimous decision, but Donaire gave him the roughest fight of his career. Hurt him eighth, ninth round. Uh, Fractured his eye socket early in that fight in the second round. Both have been dominant in the aftermath. Donaire has gone on to win the WBC top title in May of last year. Destroyed Obali to do so. Outstanding first defense of the title against uh, yeah, it's outstanding first title defense. I think it was in August of 2021. So Donaire is coming in this fight on a roll, a resurgence in his career at age 39. The monster has been the monster. Uh, I'll go to you on this. Back to you on this one, Jacob. Um, all roads leads to another. This being another outstanding fight. Can this fight live up to the hype that we saw 2.5 years ago in the same locale in Japan?
I think it does. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be as good as the first one, but I think what you have here is a scenario where you have just two great, you know, not only great boxers but great ambassadors of the sport, and the young, hungry, up and coming, or we can even say even he's beyond up and coming. He's a champion, a lion that's a new A versus the older statesman who's had his, I would say his third, I guess, resurgence in his career. Um, and they're both gonna, they're both, very cerebral fighters. They're both very skilled. They both have ways to win, and they both will fight their hearts out. And they're trying to win. They're not one of these fighters that's just trying to protect the row or trying to play it safe, or they're going out there to make a statement, I think. So that when you have that kind of those ingredients, it's almost guaranteed that it's going to be a good matchup. Now, I mean, whether or not it'll live up to the hype, really just depends on if one of them gets caught with something, or if something happens early. It's going to be a lot of. I think we'll know a lot in the first couple rounds of what kind of strategy each one's going to implement this time around. But like you said, Daniel, he does know that he can hurt him because he did hurt him. He's the only one to really touch Inoue, in any regards. And he's the only one to basically be able to get knocked down with a great body shot and be able to finish the fight on his feet. I mean, lesser men would have stayed down. Lesser men wouldn't have gone on and been able to finish that fight. And many, have been lesser men. But I like both guys, but I'm really rooting for Daniel here because I don't know. He just seems like just a heck of a nice guy, and I would love to see him get this type of win to kind of I mean, he's already a first ballot Hall of Famer for sure, but I think this would be a nice little story. And then, we can work our way towards a great trilogy, because boxing is, full of a handful of great trilogies that we remember. And it'd be great if we can get another one, before Daniel closes the sunset on his career.
Donaire said the cause of his demise was due to the fact that he went into their first fight looking to basically looking just to fight, to punish, to bully the younger Inoue, and he gave Inoue credit for standing up to the fire. Gail Daniel, he says he's going to look to be more of a boxer, a well-rounded guy this time around. He also made an issue of the gloves. I think he said he's used to wearing Everlast gloves, but for that first fight, there was some issues with the gloves being transported to him in Japan, and instead he wore winning gloves, which is the preferred glove of Inoue. This time, Donaire said that will not be an issue this time around. He has his Everlast gloves with him. Uh, do you think, Gail and Daniel, is the glove issue that big of a deal in your opinions? And is it wise for Donaire to be more of a boxer this time, or should he be a strict fighter, or should there be a mixture of the two styles in order to win?
Donaire is such a smart fighter, and he knows exactly what to do with the specific skill set he has. I do think it'd be smarter for him not to engage in a firefight. He knows what Inui's got and what he can do. He got a full feast of it last time. What he needs to do is figure out what it takes, something a little like Joe Cordina figured out over the weekend, and several others have in recent fights. Figure out what that tactic is, what that fate is, what that foot movement is, what is necessary to distract Inui for just a split second, to draw his attention where it shouldn't go, to have a hand dropped or have him turn the wrong direction or come in when he needs him and catch him. Because Donaire's power is still there. And I would say since he dropped a division, it's gotten better. He's absolutely maximized it. And if he can catch Inui to the body, he does have a chance. He might even have a chance in a brawl. I just think that's a very bad idea, because against the younger fighter, you're just, you're working at a disadvantage already. If he can figure out a way to do it, and also credit his wife / trainer, Rachel Donaire, she is a very good, unacknowledged tactician for a game plan. If they can figure out what game plan will work and he can execute, he does have a chance. I mean, I would not bet my next paycheck on Donaire. This is very much your heart is pulling for Donaire because of everything good he represents about boxing. The fact that he's still in there, still taking just crazy tough fights at nearly 40 years old and succeeding just beyond his wildest dreams. He said that he is just going to keep going. Even after this fight, he said he feels great. He sees no need to retire. It's the stuff that boxing fans live for. But, but, Naoya Inoue is a once in a generation talent. He's cold blooded. He's cold hearted. He's got all the power in the world, all the confidence it takes. The one problem now that's different than in the first fight is the fact that Donaire broke his face, broke his orbital bone. He seems to have come back from it. I just think psychologically it's there. You're not going to want to get hit where your face is held together by plates or screws. That could be a factor. To the gloves, question about the gloves. The gloves can be a problem if you let it be a problem. Have you ever worn a pair of athletic shoes where the laces weren't quite right? Or I'm one of those people, I just can't stand them to be twisted, right? I've retied my shoes multiple times to get it right. Or the sole or the insole or something's wrong, or there's threads inside. I mean, we've all done that. Now imagine having the tools of your trade, instead of being on your feet, the equivalent on your hands and not quite feeling right. It's not that the gloves can't perform, it's that you can't perform when you feel the tools aren't proper. So let's see if that does make a difference. I do think glove issues make a difference to the fighter, and that's why they make a difference.
Yep. That the main things when it comes to gloves, it's always about comfort. It's always about you feel what how it affects, whether it's protection or whether it feels like a punching power. Now, if I remember the first time, both of them had to wear the same pair of gloves because I think that was the deal they had to make as part of the World Boxing Super Series. And we have to remember gloves come in key in a lot of things. In the Mayweather Maidana fight, I think it was on both of them almost. I think, including particularly the second one, he almost didn't have a fight because Mayweather was insistent on one particular set of gloves, and he rejected Maidana's gloves. So it is very key when it comes to do what a fighter thinks he's able to do. But in this case, I think it's just more mainly about comfort because at the end of the day, what's going to get talked about is not the gloves; it's going to be the action in the ring. And when it comes to Donaire, I picked him last week for the upset because I feel like he knows this moment. He knows what he needs to learn. He knows that he probably can't go in fully as a brawler in this fight. Yes, has to respect Inoue's power, but he also knows how he has to fight very, very, very smartly because obviously you have an now Inoue on the other side of the ring that is entering his physical prime. And that means he's only going to get stronger, he's only going to get faster, and because he broke his face in the first fight, probably has a bit of a chip on his shoulder when it comes to one Mr. Donaire. So Nonito probably going to have a good game plan. It's true his wife does not get a lot of love for what she does as tactician. He does fairly well, really, really well. And you're probably going to get a hybrid of both. He's going to brawl when he feels he needs to, but he's probably going to be a tactician, use the jab a bit more, and try to see if he can disrupt Inoue's rhythm. If he's able to do that, you're going to see Donaire cap off his career with one of the best victories he'll ever have.
I also want to give Donaire credit for being at the forefront of drug testing. He's always been like one of those fighters that has been at the forefront of that. And so I give him a lot of credit for, making sure that he's part of that program and that there's no questions about his, victories and, all that stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we're going to end the thing on that note. It should be an outstanding fight. Um, I'll just again, I hope that it lives up to the hype of the for and if it's even close to what we saw in November 19 in the finals of the World Boxing Super Series tournament in the same arena, the Saitama Super Arena in Saitama, Japan. It should be an outstanding contest. Boxing fans are going to be up, depending on what part of the country you're from. Here, stateside, they're going to be up early in the morning. The card starts at 5:30 on ESPN Plus. That's where you can find it here in the United States. I think you can find it also on, correct me if I'm wrong, Amazon Prime as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. Uh, uh, I know some people others are going to be up as early as 5, 6 in the morning. I think they fight around 7:30 is when the main event will start. There is going to be a private hangout group among boxing media that's going to watch the fight at a place that is not is I will say is Nunya, and when I mean Nunya, it's none of your business, an exclusive group. But yeah, if you can get up. Please, please, please pay attention to this fight. One of the better matchups that you will see in 2022. And let's start to shut things down on that note. I want to thank Abraham Gonzalez. I want to thank Olaf for checking us out live this evening. Again, please hit that like button if you have not clicked it. Please make sure you click that subscribe button. Make sure you follow Pound for Pound Boxing Report on various podcast platforms. We're all over the place now. I'll go around the panel here. Even though we didn't start the show in our customary fashion, ladies first, we're going to end the show with ladies first. Gail from Communities Digital News. nyfights.com. For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk media, for those who want to check you out occasionally, every now and then on TMZ Live, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Hey, I do thank our boss, the editor-in-chief, Abe Gonzalez of nyfights.com. He's probably keeping an ear on me to make sure I don't say anything too crazy tonight. And if you
But
do,
you cuss on the show, but he gives you the opportunity to cuss in your articles.
I didn't fucking cuss on this show tonight. What are you talking about? By the way, if you're just not going to get up with that alarm, it is on ESPN. If you got the plus, you should be able to see the recorded version. So the minute you wake up, get your beverage of choice and fire up that fight. All right, you'll be able to see it. For those of us on the West Coast, that's a damn early wake up call, and it will be worth it, even for a night owl like myself. I am going to get my ass up. So make sure you're there to see this fight. But we won't steer you wrong. And yes, you can find me at nyfights.com, also at Communities Digital News, which is COMM, Digi, D-I-G-I News, comdiginews.com. Viva!
Indeed. I go to you, Jacob, from Jabba Boxing. And also, I think you still occasionally appear on Wrong Real podcast for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk television and film, movies. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, and I was just looking up that because I hadn't heard that Amazon Prime thing. So it's apparently in Japan on Amazon Prime Video in Japan, it's being shown there, but in the US, it's going to be on ESPN Plus. So I don't think for any local listeners, they can't use Prime unless they're in Japan. But yeah, I could be found at JRATM23 on Twitter. And I will be probably staying up all night because I have a flight in the morning and to watch this thing. And then, hopefully I'll get some Z's on the plane.
Yeah, staying up all night and so you can get some sleep in the morning on the plane ride. Smart. I'll go to you last but certainly not least, Daniel from the Inscriber and for Boxing News, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk wrestling. And Cody Rhodes in the pay-per-view. What was that? I'm still trying to figure that situation out. But for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me, folks, at Rockers99 on Twitter, RAWKUZ99. Definitely catch me on there. And look, Cody's a crazy person. We should know about this from now. In the last 6 years, he is a crazy person because only a crazy person would do that match with that type of injury. Granted, it was already torn off the bone, and you can't hurt it any more than it already has. But yeah, that's bad. And just keep an eye out for Donovan Mitchell news maybe in the next week or so.
Oh, nice teaser there is Quinn Snyder, Utah head coach, has decided to resign, and apparently Donovan Mitchell is not too happy about it. And yeah, could we see Donovan Mitchell to the Knicks? You will see. We will see. Uh, if you want to check me out on Twitter, on the socials, talking for those who want to talk boxing, music, and fitness, you know what it is with me on the socials. Brother Jr. At Brother Jr. 76 on Twitter, at Brother Jr. SC on IG. As I said earlier, if you want to check out all things pertaining to Pound for Pound Box Report, the site is the place to go to, p4pboxreport.com. Again, if you want to email us with comments, questions, suggestions, etc., you can do so, p4pboxing at p4pboxreport.com. On the site, you'll find links to where to find us all over social media, the Facebook page, the YouTube channel, Twitter, Tumblr, IG page, as well as where you can find us on links to where to find us all over the podcast platform. Anywhere where there is a podcast, be it Apple Podcast, be it Anchor, be it Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere and everywhere else in between. You should be able to find Pound for Pound Box Report, and also link to the Beachbody on Demand. Again, at the very least, take advantage of the 14-day free trial, where you get free access for 2 weeks on any and all programs on Beachbody on Demand. If you're looking for boxing-based programs, fight fans, I suggest you check out 10 Rounds. On the next episode, we will do a full recap of the rematch between Inoue and Donaire. We will do a recap of Kyoguchi in his fight with Bermudez, Edgar Berlanga in his fight with Angulo. Jaime Munguia is fighting once again, folks, Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly. And also a recap of Trevor Bryan against Daniel Dubois. And we will do a preview of unification fight at 175 pounds between Anta Bertabiev, um, Bertabiev, BC IBF champion. He's not what I'm saying. He's fighting Joe Smith Jr., who's WBO champion. My apologies. That's going to be in New York on ESPN as well as ESPN Plus. Uh, that's the main fight on the docket for next week, since the breaking news regarding Jamal Charlo, he's had to pull out due to a back injury. So his fight against Selecki is on the shelf. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us with their comments and their questions in the live YouTube chat. For Gail from Communities Digital News and NY Fights, uh, for Jacob of Jap Hook Boxing, for Daniel of Four Boxing News and the Inscriber. I am your host, Michael. This is episode 366 of Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good one, good evening, good night, and still keep the people of Uvalde and keep the people of Buffalo on your minds. Episode 366 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. See you guys next time. And free Brittany Griner. Last but certainly not least, free Brittany Griner.